Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you a bunch of tools and a bunch of engines and sound websites that you can use for the Game Jam. So this is going to be an ultimate Game Jam guide for any Game Jam that you participate in your life. It's going to be great. Let's get started. So first of all, engines. I'm not super knowledgeable in 2D. I haven't done 2D in a long time, but back in the day I did use GameMaker and it was fantastic. So if you're looking to do 2D and you're new to it, feel free to check out GameMaker. It has a sprite editor in the engine, and you can make cool little sprites like this and make a game out of it. It also has drag and drop code and GML, and GML is actually surprisingly simple to pick up. You can do a lot of complex things with it, but it's quite beginner friendly. The next suggestion is Unity, which is also an amazing engine. It has 3D and 2D capabilities. It has a fantastic 2D engine in it and fantastic 3D engine, and it's very beginner friendly. The C# code is not too hard to pick up, and if you are looking to really get into Unity and you're maybe an artist, you can look into something like Playmaker, which is visual scripting. But yeah, it's worth looking at, and the reason you really have no excuse to get into it is because if you check out a channel like Bracky's, who has hundreds upon hundreds of videos, you can go through and see all these amazing tutorials. He has a bunch of things on how to make video games and for beginners. So if you want to use C# with this, with Bracky's and Unity, I highly recommend that combination. It'll be fantastic. Next up is Unreal, and I highly recommend this for, in particular, to artists and beginners as well, because it has a visual scripting language called Blueprints, which is very easy to pick up, and you can have something really cool done in a short amount of time. And if you're not sure about Blueprints, I have an entire series called Let's Create that you can check out as well for that. And there's a bunch of other resources you can see over here, like Dean Ashford and stuff like that. So there's so many resources. You have no excuse to not try and make a game. You have Unity, GameMaker, and Unreal. Next up, and that talk was mostly for beginners and artists. The next thing is art assets. And I want everyone to do all the stuff from scratch, apart from music and sound effects. So you might be wondering, Matt, how am I going to make art assets? Well, I'm actually going to teach you how to use two programs really quickly. First up, we're going to do MagicaVoxel. Now, all you have to do is go to MagicaVoxel, type in MagicaVoxel on Google, and you'll get a link to this website. You click on this, you'll download it, extract it, and then you can run MagicaVoxel. Why MagicaVoxel? Well, it is a very easy to use program. I'm going to demonstrate that now, and you can make some really cool little characters and some cool environments. So let me demonstrate how you can do this yourself. If you click on New, and I'm just going to reset my color palette. So I've clicked on New. You notice it's got this weird sides. I'm just going to make it something like 60 overall. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to hit 0 to get rid of that cube in the center. And I have a grid, so if you don't have a grid, just click grid, it'll make your life a lot easier. You press right click to orbit, middle mouse button to pan, and then you can scroll with the mouse wheel, or you can press WASD to do similar functions as well. I personally use the right mouse click to orbit, middle mouse button to pan, and then I zoom in and out. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a little environment, and I'm going to show you how you can use modular art assets to make something very quickly and effectively. So first of all, go to attach and pick a color. I'm just going to pick a boring gray for now, just to get this up and running. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create art assets one by one. So let's make a little scene. First of all, you probably want a wall of some sorts. Now to build a wall, we're going to make it so we can easily move these around. So we need the numbers to be even, so like 6 or 12. And the great thing is you can count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 12. So I'm going to do something like 16 across, and then I can just click up. So that's 1, 2. So that's 12 up. And we can always scale this later in Unity or Unreal. And then once you've clicked using the attach tool, you can left click here, go to here, and just drag up. And now you have your wall. And what you can do if you like is we can detail this wall a bit. So let's actually click here and drag up. So we have a bit of depth for the wall. And what we can do is, if you want, you can add in a section here. You could also detail it out if you want. It's completely up to you how you want to build this. You could also put some details on the top. So it's completely up to you on the type of architecture you want to build. You can also go to paint and paint different sections in. So say you got this default look here, you can paint in a line there, and a line there, to make it a bit more visually interesting. And this is where it's going to connect. So if you want, you can do cool squares like that. And then you can add in some kind of descriptions if you like. It's up to you. This doesn't really mean anything, but it's just something more visually interesting to look at, right? So I've got something like this done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save. So I've painted that in, I'm going to hit save. And then what I'm going to do is call this wall1 and save it. The next important thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to OBJ, and on my desktop I have a folder called MagicaVoxel art assets. So I'm going to double click that, and you'll notice because we already saved it here, it already says wall1 OBJ. If you're wondering what the OBJ is, it's a 3D file that can be read by most game engines. So we're going to hit save, and then we're done. What we're going to do next is make one more variation on the wall. And the best way to do this is make sure you're in Paint, hold Alt, and left click on the base wall color. You can then left click and paint this away. And the reason why is because it auto selected this color for you. So if I Alt click here, I go back to that color. And if I Alt click here, I go back to my other color. And what you can do is, if you like, you can have a blank wall, or you can just paint some other stuff in, you know, Tetris blocks. That's what I'm going to paint in. Awesome. So we've got something like that. We can then go, once again, instead of save, if you press save, it'll save over. Go to as, and then what we can do is call this wall2. And now you have both walls, and you're basically really just duplicating it and painting a different style. Then you can go to OBJ, and already says wall2, so hit save. Next thing we're going to do is hit new, and we've got this massive square here again, so hit 0, zoom back in, and let's create a basic floor. So let's go to attach, select a really basic color like this gray one, and let's do it so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across. We can then fill this in, and just like before, we can go to paint, select a color, and we can try and make it more interesting if you'd like, or you could do like a pattern on the inside like this. It's completely up to you. So let's say this is my first pattern. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to call this ground tile 1, save it, hit OBJ under export once again, and hit save. I'm then going to do the exact same thing we did before, where I'm going to hold Alt, left click, and paint some of this away. And say I want to design like this, I can then go to save as, call this the second ground tile, hit save, OBJ, hit save again, and then once again I can paint in, I just press Alt to change it. I can do something maybe like this for fun, why not? And I can hit save as, make this the third tile, and then I can click OBJ, and it's already there. So I've got all these different models now, and then I'm going to create one more, and this last one, it can be, so zoom out, so it's got this again, so hit 0. Let's go and get another color. So what do we have here? Something like this. So go back to attach. So this brown color is good, and we can click up, and let's make like a mini super basic torch. So click there, click out, so you have something like this. There we go. Super basic torch that I can put on a wall. And if you want to make it all metal, you can get a gray color. Whoops, go to paint. You can go ahead and do that. Get something darker for these bits if you like, to make it a bit more interesting. It's completely up to you how you want to approach this. So let's say I'm just going to go back to my brown color, just to break it up a bit. And then what I can do is hit attach. I can get one of these red colors. And you can paint this in if you want. But it's completely up to you. I'm just going to put a light, and you can put particle effects. So I've got my torch, save as, torch, and save, obj, and save that too. Okay, so what are we going to do with all these assets that we've created? We're going to go minimize this. We're going to go into the engine of your choice, create a new folder, MagicaVoxel art assets. We're then going to go into that folder, and let's just drag all this in. Now, we don't want these MTL files. What we want are the OBJ and the texture. If you don't have the texture, what will happen is you won't be able to see all the colors that you painted on your object. So once you have those, click, drag it in, and if you're using Unreal, you got to import all, and Unity, you have to do the import settings there. Now, let's start with the ground tiles, and I'm going to click and add that in. Now, it's really small, you can't actually see it, so I'm just going to fix this up, 0, 0, 0, and I'm going to make it something like 15 by 15 by 15, and rotate this. And now I've got my art asset here, and I can actually drag in the others. So 15, 15, 15, 0, 0, 0, fix up the rotation, and just, I'm going to change this to 5, the snapping, and just move it over here. And then I can click in and add the final tile. And the great thing about having modular art assets is that you can do a lot of different setups without having to make additional content. So we have these 3 here. I'm then going to drag in my wall, and let's try 20 by 20 by 20 and see how this looks. So drag it, rotate it across, and like that. So this looks like a really good size. I'm then going to memorize the settings, so 20, 20, 20. So I'm going to drag this other wall in and do the exact same process. Rotate it so I can see it. And then I'm just going to bring it up and snap it into place. Once again, if you're using Unity, you can figure out the settings, or if you're using another 3D engine. It's the exact same principles and fundamental core ideas. So I've got that set up there. And the last thing is my torch. So bring the torch in, and let's try a setting of, say, 15. That's quite big, so let's try 8. And that's much more manageable. Rotate it across like that. I'm just going to add in that there, and one over here. Why not? Now, one thing with MagicaVoxel art assets, if you try and build your lighting, it won't work because they don't have a light map UV. So just click movable. Performance-wise, it's not usually the best, but because this is a game jam and we're just creating these simple art assets for the game jam, and you're going to be running it on a PC and it's MagicaVoxel art assets, it's kind of okay. It shouldn't be too bad. The next thing is we want to create an interesting floor. So I'm going to drag these away, and I'm going to start with this design here. So I'm going to drag this across, and I'm going to hold Alt because I'm in Unreal, so it's quite easy for me to do this. You got to work with whatever engine you have and the snapping tools. Alt, click out and drag, and now because I've made this base, I can just drag this out. And I'll move these other tiles in a moment, so I'll just move these out of the way. Okay, now we've got some form of floor going. And what you can do is you can actually select all this, hold Alt, and we can rotate it and put it on the other side. And if you want, what you can do is you can actually just get rid of these light sources and the get rid of the atmospheric fog. It's pitch black. I'm going to add in some point lights. Maybe make the radius much smaller. And we can turn down the intensity. Whoops, 3000. And then what you can do is you can make it more visually interesting by just changing the various light colors. So you could have a light like that. If you position it, you can just mess around with the position that you want. Then what you might have over here is a different color light. So let's say blue, delete this side. And there we go, you have something interesting to work with. And you can even have some interesting variety over here. So I'm going to extend this wall, so click, select these components. I'm going to extend to these components, and then grab these ones. Oops. And this is just a really simple setup to show you guys that yeah, it's not hard at all to just use MagicaVoxel and create something really nice and simple. It looks quite good. And then you could use these tiles for interesting other designs, but to save myself some time, I can just click and add these around. Now, because you're not baking your lighting, don't go insane on the point lights. You'll just lag your game a lot. So be responsible with your point lights. And let's have another look. There we go. It looks nice. It's great. It's a game jam. Add particle effects. You're done. Good job. And that's really cool for some dynamic lighting. This kind of thing we've got going here. Ooh, spooky. The entrance. You could just, for example, you know, that's even more spooky. So depending on the type of game you're making, you can have some really dramatic lighting. Okay, so that's that. I'm just going to save this as the MagicaVoxel map. And now you can add in your gameplay. You can make this third person, first person, whatever you want to do. Have fun with it. So now I want to show you how to use Blender, and we're just going to make a few props for the scene, such as like a crate, a pot, and stuff like that. So if you go onto Chrome, you have Blender here, which you can download and install. It's completely free, and it's fantastic for indie game developers because you don't have to pay anything. Like when you export the art assets and you use it in a commercial game, you don't owe them anything. So it's really fantastic, and it's a really great tool. The other thing we'll need to do is we need to download a color palette. So this is like a massive cheating thing I do in game jams, and I love it. Usually you'd go in Photoshop, you'd make a really nice texture atlas with different colors and textures and stuff. We're going to skip that. We're just going to type in color palette, grab this thing. This is great. Whoever made this, thank you. Paper Jacks. So we're going to grab this. We're going to just drag it directly to the desktop, and we're going to use this later. Maybe just call this color palette to more easily reference it. Okay, so we got all that. let's go into Blender, and you're greeted with this screen. So what we can do is we can middle mouse scroll in and out. We can press middle mouse and orbit around. We can also hold shift, middle mouse to pan. Those are the basic ways to move. Quite simple. Next thing we can do is you'll notice this object is selected. It is selected because it's highlighted. You can actually press tab, and down here you have three options. This is vertex mode, so you can select a vertex and move it, like so. This is the edge tool, so you can select an edge and move it. And this is the face tool, so you can select a face and move it. The other thing I want to show you guys, if you press tab again, you go back into object mode. If you press shift plus tab, it goes into snapping mode. Once again, shift tab to exit, press undo, shift tab, snapping mode. So when I say snapping mode, shift tab, that's what you're going for. Okay, shift tab to get out, and shift tab one more for snapping mode. Cool, so what we're going to do now is, I'm just going to bring up a reference on the side. Cool, we're going to make a crate, a pot, and potentially another art asset. But I want to show you guys my basic form of how I quickly model low poly objects for game jams. So what we're going to do, press tab to go into edit mode, select the face tool, and then select the top face. We are going to press E. Now if you move, you should be in snapping mode, it will snap up by 1 unit. If you go back down, hold shift, and then drag up, it goes up 1 unit, like 1 little unit at a time as opposed to 1 massive unit. So we're going to move up just 1. Then we're going to press S. S is for scale, so you can scale in. So we're just going to scale in about twice. And then what we're going to do is just drag this up, but that's too far. So left click, hold shift, and drag it up once. The next step that we want to follow is to press E to extrude. Now we're not going to move it this time, we're going to go straight to S for scale, and we're going to drag that inward, somewhere like that. What we're going to do next is left click, hold shift, and just drag it up by 1. And then we're going to press E, hold shift, and drag it up to about here. We're going to press S, shift, and drag it out a little. We're then going to press E, hold shift, bring it up. And now what we can do is press E, press S, shift, and scale it in. We can press E again, hold shift, and then drag it down. We created this kind of center bit. Then you can press tab and have a look. The next thing we want to do is press tab, right click on the bottom, and if we scale here, it's going to make this weird shape. So let's actually undo that. We're going to press E, hold shift, and bring it down 1 unit. We're then going to press S, hold shift, and bring it in. Press tab, and we can have a look at it, and it looks quite nice. This is a nice little pot. And over here we can press smooth, and it can smooth it out for us if you want that type of look. So that's smoothed. The next thing we can do, I'll just bring that back to flat. If you left click over here and drag this out, you'll get this other window, so another place to work from. However, we don't want to just work from here. We want to actually click here and go to UV Image Editor. This is going to allow us to apply colors and different textures onto this pot. Once again, click here, UV Image Editor. What we're going to do next is over here, drag this out, you'll see all these little tabs. The only tabs I want you to care about is this one, which allows us to change the location, rotation, and scale. This tab, it allows us to assign a material. By default, it has the default material. And this one over here, which allows us to assign a texture. 1, 2, 3. We're going to go to this material tab, and we're going to create a new material. The way you create a new material is by pressing the plus button, then hitting new. And you'll notice it's material.001. We're going to double click and call this the texture atlas. This is going to be our texture atlas material, and we're going to put that image we downloaded earlier. So remember, this is the material tab. This is what we use for images. So click new, and you'll get texture. You'll see new and open. We're going to go to open, and then we're going to go to the desktop and grab the color palette and hit open image. And you should see this image here. And now if you click back on the material, you'll see that there, material has nothing. Texture atlas has this. And what we then want to do, so we've got texture atlas on here. We want to press tab, make sure you're in face mode, press A, and it selects everything. We're then going to press space, which brings up an entirely new menu. And the only thing we care about is something called light map pack, and you're going to press enter. Enter again. Now, you've got this over here, and you've got your object here. So all I want you to do is in here, click this section here and click on color palette.png, and you'll notice your UVs go everywhere over this color palette. The reason why this color palette appears down here is because this object has this material and you have assigned this texture. But you'll notice you can't actually see a difference here. To see a difference, if you click here and go to material, go to texture, you'll see all these colors popping up. And you might be wondering why this is black. It's simply because this is a point light. So if you want to see more, you could simply press Shift D and just drag that over there, left click, drag it down, and you can see a bit more. And you could also just, bring this a lot closer. Awesome. What we're going to do is we're going to fix up the coloring. So in order to fix up the coloring, we press tab, and you've got to have all these faces selected with A. You'll notice they're not selected in here. The way to select them here is if you middle mouse click and drag, you can pan. You can also zoom in and out. I want you to press A in here, and you'll select all of them. Now if you press S and scale, you can scale, and you'll notice it's doing it in a snapping fashion. So press Shift Tab to get out of snapping, and then I want you to scale it again. Now you got this cluster. In order to move them, you press G, and you just click and drag it somewhere. Notice that the color is changing here. So I'm going to scale it a bit smaller. Notice, depending on what I go onto, I can have different colors, which is great. So I can have a pot like that. Guess what else I can do? I can press Shift D, and I can press Y to move it over here. If I press X, it allows me to move it on that axis. And if I press Z, it allows me to move it up and down. We're going to press Y and move it over here. I'm going to press Tab, and notice it's all selected. So let's say I want a different color pot. Press Tab, and now I've got this one. Shift D, press Y, move it over here. Press Tab, everything's selected. I'm going to press G, and maybe I want a red pot. I've got all these different pots. And as I mentioned before, you can select them all and smooth them out. So I've got these 3 different pots now. I'm going to press Control S, because we haven't saved yet, which is a bad idea. And I'm going to call these my dungeon props. And for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to put it on the desktop. Awesome, so now we have these pots and we've got all these wonderful colors. You have a lot of power available to you now. So let's press Shift Tab so we can go back into snapping, and I'm just going to move them over here for now. And now what I'm going to do, so if you just to remind everyone, it's the middle mouse button zooming, middle mouse button to orbit, and shift middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to create another cube. And with this cube, I'm going to show you something a bit different. So I'm going to press tab, and all the faces are selected. I'm then going to go to Tools, Loop Cut and Slice. You'll notice it gives you this purple square. What this is doing is it's allowing you to make a cut, an incision. It's going to make additional edges. And let me show you why. So left click and bring it around over there. Hit Loop Cut and Slice again, left click, and bring it roughly around there. Loop Cut and Slice again, bring it down, and we're just going to repeat this process. So we've got that side covered. We're going to repeat it over here, and you should be able to guess what I'm going to make. And if you guess crate, you're correct. So now we have these lines cut out. What you can do is you can press the face tool, and now if you right click, you notice that face is selected. Hold shift, right click, both of them are selected. Hold shift and select all of these middle faces. What we can do is we can press E to extrude, S to scale, hold shift, and drag it in. And now you have a crate. That's simple, super easy, and really nice. What we're going to do is press tab, press A twice. We're going to go, and instead of pressing new, we're going to click on this and go texture atlas. So the texture atlas is applied. We're then going to press space, and because we already have light map pack typed in, it'll be there. Just in case you don't have that, just type in light and you'll get that. You press enter and enter again. And now you'll get your UVs. You can click in here and go to color palette, and it's applied everywhere. We can then, if you remember, you press A, Shift Tab to get out of scale, to get out of snapping mode. You press S and you bring it all in. Press S again to bring it further in, and then you can press G and you can go find a nice color. So find something that you like, that you'd like to use for a crate. There are a ton of different colors you can use here. So it's a bit washed out. That's pretty good. Okay, so I'm probably going to go with this one. And now you have a crate art asset. Just undo that. Shift Tab, so you can go to the snapping mode and move this over here. So now we've got a few different art assets. Just right click, shift, and right click these, and just, whoops. Just seeing what they look like. Cool. So now we've got all these. What else, if anything, do we want to make? We can also, if you want, we can make like a barrel. So create a cylinder. And before you move the cylinder, you'll notice it has this thing called vertices and, vertices down here. We want to reduce these because the poly count's going to be crazy. So just type in 12 and you'll notice the faces change. So now we can drag this over here. And the cylinder is a good base to use when you're making a barrel. We're going to use the same technique we used earlier. So we're going to click on Tools. We're going to go into Edit mode by pressing Tab, and we're going to go into Loop Cut and Slice. We're then, Loop Cut and Slide in here. So we're going to click here, and then if you press S, if you press S, hold Shift, and scale out, you can create this barrel shape. And it's quite simple like that. You can then press Tab, click on the, press Tab again, click on the face tool, go up here, so you right click here. We can press E to extrude, S to scale, hold Shift, scale in. Then we can press E, hold Shift, and bring it down one. And if you're going to see the bottom of the barrel, you can do the same thing here. So E, S, drag it in, E, Shift, drag it up one. Now we've got this barrel. And you can also create like little metal bits for it. So I'll show you how to do that. Just go to create, create another cylinder. We might give it like, we'll keep it to 12 for now. And what you can do is drag this over here on top, press S to scale, select an axis, in this case the Z, and bring it in. And you'll notice my art asset looks like that. So S, Z, hold shift, and we'll just bring it in so it's like a little ring. We can then drag this down, so you can hold left click, shift, and bring it down. And then if you press S, shift, you can bring it out a bit. And notice I've got this ring. So what I can do now is I can press left click, shift, I can press shift D, press the Z for Z axis, hold shift, and I can just bring it down all the way over there. And now I've got this nice little barrel asset. And what I can do is I can right click on the base of the barrel. I can press tab and select everything, space, light map pack, enter, enter. And I can do the exact same process, assign the texture atlas, change this to color palette. In here, press A, shift tab to get rid of the snapping mode, press S and scale that in. And I can just go for another color like this. And then I can select the metal ring, press tab, select it all, light map pack's already selected, enter, enter. And in here, press A. In here, make sure I have my texture atlas. Then in here, make sure I have color palette. It's assigned, scale it in, and then I can find a metal to go for. So S to scale it in, middle mouse button to pan, press G, and bring it somewhere like that. Then I can select the bottom one. Or I could just duplicate this. So I can select the bottom one, delete that, right click there, shift D, press Z, hold shift, and bring it down. And I might move this one up a bit, so left click and hold shift. Awesome, so I got my little barrel here. And as a little bonus, we want all these objects to be together, these three, the rings, the metal, and the barrel. So what we can do is we can right click on the ring, right click on the other ring, and then right click on the barrel. We can then press Ctrl J. And let me show you what that did. So if I right click on this crate and then right click back, notice it's all together now. So Ctrl J will merge them all together. Press Shift Tab again, and now we can snap it around. So we've got a barrel, we've got some various little pots, and we've got our crates. So just save it again. And now what we can do is export these. So before I mentioned, we have the three important tabs. We have this little cube here, this texture atlas, and where this material, and this is where we can apply textures. So over on this little cube here, we want the location to be 0, 0, 0, so the pivot is 100% correct in Unreal, making our lives easier when we click and drag this object around. So make sure you zero out the location in this tab, File, Export, File, Export, FBX, another format that game engines can read. Then I'm going to go into my Blender Art Assets folder that I made, and I'm going to not call this Dungeon Props. I'm going to call this my B crate, so Blender crate, and then I'm going to go and click on selected objects, and the reason why is because I only want to export the object I've selected. If I don't export the object I've selected, it will export everything and all the pivots will be out of place. So I'm just going to click on that and I'm going to hit export FBX, and now I have my FBX in the Blender Art Assets. Just to quickly test this, I'm going to click on it, drag it into Unreal, and just drag it here for now. I'm then going to hit import, close that, and now I can drag my crate in. It's going to compile the shading. I'm going to make sure it's movable, so it has physics, drag it up, and it's quite big, so I might just scale it down for now. And I have my crate 3D modeled in my MagicaVoxel art asset scene, which is awesome. Okay, let's go back into Blender. Move this out the way, right click here, 0, tab 0, tab 0, so its pivot's correct. File, Export, FBX, B, and then this would be my, I'm just gonna call this barrel. barrel.fbx. The reason I called this other one b_crate is because I actually have a crate in that scene. I didn't want the names to conflict, so make this 000 and file export fbx. This one can be my blue pot. Export fbx. This one, of course, file export fbx. Double click red pot, and last but not least, the green pot. 000 file export fbx, and this can be the green pot. I know it's not fully green, but close enough. Okay, save Blender just in case. Minimize that, and now we're in here. New folder, Blender props, just so we can keep everything nice and tidy in one place. Whoops, I just opened that by mistake. I'm going to left click and drag that in here. Open Blender props, go into my folder, select everything except for my crate in my case because I just tested it out. I'm going to drag this in. Now, of course, I mentioned this before, if you're using Unity, different process, but if you're using Unreal, it's this process. But it's all the same kind of fundamentally. Now I can drag my barrel in. It's pretty huge. I can scale that down a bit. That's a bit big. Let's try scale that down one more. Let's turn this off to 1. Oh, sorry, that's movement. I'm just going to type in here to save myself some time. Okay. Got my crate. Pot, movable, scale that down. You notice it's white, and the reason why it's white is for some reason the texture, the material didn't apply, so just click and drag that in. So you can actually click here. Let's see what's happening. So let's just drag these in. So I want these to be significantly smaller. So 0. Let's try 15. Actually, that looks kind of cool. Let's do 0.1. Actually, I like that, but I'll keep it even for now. 0.15. Drag that texture atlas in, and the red pot. Okay, now I have all my art assets available that I just quickly modeled in Blender. So it doesn't take much time at all to put some really simple art assets together that you can use in a modular fashion, you reuse again and again and again, which is great. And I can make these simulate physics if I like. So just make sure they're all movable. For some reason it's telling me lighting needs to be rebuilt. There we go. And that's about it. That's how you can quickly do a very simple low poly modeling style in Blender with some cool little lighting tricks, texture atlas tricks I should say. I turn that up a bit and get some crates going. Sorry, some barrels. You can rotate this. Put it somewhere like there. Put the potion or the pot on top of the barrel if I want. The crate. I keep thinking about barrels for some reason. And then I can start, if I want, duplicate scenes around. So this can act like a little blockade for the player. They have to move around. And that is just about it. That is how you do MagicaVoxel and Blender. So I know this has been going on for quite a bit, so just add that there, and just G. And now we have some awesome art assets around for our level. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you guys was, if you go to Open Game Art, it has some really great resources in terms of music. So Open Game Art, you might think, oh, it's just 2D stuff. Actually, if you go to Browse, you have music and sound effects. The other thing is VFXR, which we've used in tutorials before. So I would highly recommend this website. And if you check licenses, some of them you can use completely free, some of them require just giving credit to the artist. I always recommend giving credit to the artist. They put time into it. They should be acknowledged. So a lot of this stuff is free and they put their hours and time into it. So it's really nice to acknowledge them, put them in your credits, put them in the description when you make your itch.io page. And here are some sound effects that you can use. So that has been a look at various game engines you can use, MagicaVoxel, Blender, a simple sound resource, which is amazing, and also VFXR. The other thing as well, I've noticed in our community, there are a lot of people posting various interesting topics. So I would highly recommend looking in the topics and seeing what people are asking for in terms of teammates, because you might be able to find a great team. If you're going in solo, you can now do some of your own modeling, and of course you can go and get your own sound effects and music. So I hope this video was useful to all of you. I tried to make this as informative as possible and as streamlined as possible. It does take a long time to go through these processes. I was quite rushed in trying to get these processes through, so it might take a little bit of rewatching specific parts, but all in all, this should be super useful to you, and I hope that you will all join in, because there really isn't any excuse with all these resources available. You have an entire month. Even if you only have 2 to 3 hours of that month, added over those 3 to 4 weeks, you can make something really great. And the Game Jam isn't about just being the best and making the best game. It's really about improving yourself and your skills and reaching new levels through accelerated development. So it's all about focusing on yourself and becoming better yourself. It's not about looking at other people's work and going, oh, I wish I could make that. It's looking at what you could have done last month. At the end of this game jam, it's at the end on the 26th, it's looking back on the last 26 days and going, oh wow, my skills have improved this much. I'm really happy I did that. So I hope you'll all join in. I hope this video was useful, and I'll see you in the next video.